First item is Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next is approval of minutes from December 3rd, 2014. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any changes? There being none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. The next item is to accept the agenda. I have one request, and that is we have a guest here tonight, Bruce Tyler, Chairman of Planning and Zoning Commission, and Deanna Rhodes is with him, our town planner. And I'm asking if we could.
Good evening, the library is closing in 20 minutes. If you have any materials to check out, you can bring them up now. The computers will go down in 10. Thank you and have a good evening.
Just move that to the beginning of the agenda. Is that okay?
So moved. Fine.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay. And we will, any communications? I don't have any tonight to share or correspondence. So we'll move on to public comment. Is there any public comment tonight? And we'll move on to Planning and Zoning Commission Development Objectives. Mr. Tyler. Good evening, Bruce. Thanks for coming.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Did you all get copies of the draft that Susan you provided? I have more copies if you don't.
Yes, I did provide them to
Okay.
you all, and they should be in your packet as well. They got it by email earlier in the week, last week. and,
I have more with me if that,
I don't know, John might want a copy.
John might want a copy. Okay.
Shirley?
I'll take one, Bruce. Or do I have it? I don't think I
Yes,
have
it should be in your packets. It looks
don't
like
have it
this. Mine looks like, hold on.
They look like this, it's
Oh,
one
this?
page.
Oh, yeah.
Mine's not a fancy green page.
Ah.
Mine's on this.
Yes.
Got it.
You
Okay.
have it.
I was looking for
Okay.
an email. Okay.
Okay, I'll take one. So you got it?
You got one right here.
I don't see green. Oh, way back, okay, good enough, thank you.
What's that?
Planning and Zoning Commission did this a while ago in order to kind of kickstart the plan of conservation and development. What I'd like to do is, since these are kind of like one-liners, just a couple of words, is explain some of them for you in detail to see where we're heading. This is not necessarily final. Obviously, the plan is not due until March of 2016, but it's where we are right now. So I'd like to talk you through some of these and then answer any questions that you might have, if that's okay.
Certainly.
We did this through a rating system, so you can see at the bottom of the page that the best you could have, we had 6 people who were voting, and so the best you could get was 6, and the worst you could get was 96. And so you can see that the first one is the Elmcrest redevelopment. Now, Elmcrest redevelopment is obviously a private project. It is not a public project, but it has a public aspect. And the public aspect of it is that we, at least I, believe that we should be moving on this, and the way to move on this is, in my opinion, is to rigorously enforce the building codes and the blight ordinance. The last time I was in some of these historic buildings was more than 5 years ago, and they were beginning to break down and decay then. I don't know what has happened in the last 5 years, but it certainly hasn't gotten any better. So I encourage our building official to enforce those regulations and enforce that ordinance with the hope that at least the buildings will be better preserved if there is no developer to actually move on that. I know that we have a grant of $50,000 to do a marketing survey on that property. But I want to point out to you that was not, it's not a gift, it is really a trade. And the trade is that we hire a consultant to do a marketing survey at one end, but that will delay any progress on development of that property for, I'm guessing, at least a year, so that we'd lose a year's worth of taxes on that property at the other end.
Well, we are hoping, Bruce, and the group that we're going to later appoint tonight, there's a 6-month deliverable on that project. Will be
Yes.
done in 6 months, and it's done in concert with the owner and a new developer that has come forward.
Yes, I'm aware of that schedule, but I'm kind of sticking to a year because I suspect that even when that study is done, it will take time afterwards to think about what the results say and how to implement them. So my guess, that's why I'm guessing it'll be closer to a year rather than 6 months. That's the first one. The second one is the Quarries Brownstone Avenue development. Obviously, that's the park and the industrial area. We also have another grant there to basically a brownfields grant to check that out. But the implication of that is if we expand in that area, and if we also do so to get access to the river, which I'm in favor of, we will reduce the amount of property available for industrial development. And because of that, we need to find other ways to provide for an industrial tax base. We've got some suggestions I think will come up during the plan, but it's one of those things where the town is already underrepresented in terms of its industrial tax base versus its residential tax base, and this kind of project doesn't help that. The third one is and actually kind of a continuation of the second one, is to expand on the development of our industrial zones. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record now, but that means infrastructure, and that to my mind means sewer and water expansion. There's a large, as you know, a large industrial zone around, well, Dairy Queen. That's the easiest way to say it. It's Dairy Queen and the properties around it. While they can be developed without water and without sewer, and hopefully we can get a marketing study done to figure that out, right now it's less likely. And so we believe that it's important to create the possibility for infrastructure in that area. Number 4 and 5 are both around Route 66, Grove Street, well, Portland Cobalt Road, and so forth. Number 4 is kind of a continuation of number 3, and that means extending the water and sewer lines along there. Number 5 is, you might have noticed that there are about a half a dozen properties for sale on Route 66 between Main and Grove. The potential is there. Some of them are just vacant lots, some of them are other things, but it's important to develop a consistent plan so that it might be important to create more viable commercial properties along that stretch of road, as just happened with Cumberland Farms. Number 6 is St. Clements. St. Clements has a very extensive expansion plan. I don't know what it is. They're going to tell us eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later. But this is long-term. The goal is to find out what the plan is and then to see what the town can do with it. Number 7, complete streets means mostly these are our arterials, our main roads, and we're looking for ways to expand that usage not only for vehicular traffic, but also bicycle traffic. And at the same time, various kinds of traffic calming devices, such as 4-way stop signs versus traffic lights, such as even painting. You find out you can even paint the roads to make them look narrow, although they're not, and that slows people down. Roundabouts, bump outs, parking angles, all that kind of stuff is very important for the development of more parking spaces and safer use of the streets. That's mostly Main Street, but it can be Route 66 and others as well. Most town roads, as opposed to state roads, are too narrow for that. But it's important to think about how we might do that. The walking trails you're probably really familiar with, so I won't bother you with that. Main Street, Glastonbury Turnpike, the Four Corners particularly, has become very much in the public news lately. And I can talk to you about that if you care to.
Sure.
We expand, please, calm down.
I've had a lot of comments on that.
We expanded that zone to provide for more industrial and business opportunities. And there's already been one to do that. However, the fact that one of the property owners decided to cut down their trees and clear cut their property is something that they're allowed to do, but I wouldn't recommend it. There's no regulation to prevent them from doing that, but clearly it reduced the value of their property. I don't know if they do that. Not only was it the cost of cutting the trees down, but it's also the residual cost of the value of the property has been reduced. As you know, there are 2 properties there. You can see the silt fence that runs between them. The Planning and Zoning Commission can intervene when they disturb the soil and it's more than a half acre of property. But there's certainly more than a half acre of property that's been clear cut, and a lot of it's been disturbed. But since it's 2 pieces of property rather than one, we're not sure whether it's at least a half acre. And so we can intervene if it's more than a half acre. But mostly when that kind of thing happens after the fact. As of the end of November, for example, we had 15 alleged zoning violations and 16 alleged blight ordinance violations. So most of this stuff happens because people just decide they're going to do it, and we find out after the fact. And then you have to figure out how to fix it if you can. So that's what's happening at the Four Corners. I know this. I saw the letter in Revries that somehow suggests that the town should have prevented that, and I'm not aware how that could have been done. The letter kind of suggests that what happened was the property owner came to us and said, "Can I cut down all my trees?" And we said, "Sure, go right ahead." And then they did that, and everybody got upset. But in fact, they just didn't ask anybody; they just did it. And that's what property owners do. I'm sure there are other zoning violations that we're not aware of, and there are other blight ordinance violations that we're unaware of. And that will continue to come up. The only thing we can do is try to prevent them if we can, and if we can't, try to fix them when we find out. So,
And you don't mean particularly at that property, you mean
every-
anywhere?
anywhere.
And everywhere.
Anywhere and everywhere. Yes, we'll
Potentially.
rule the world, well, at least the town. But that's what planning and zoning, that's what zoning enforcement officers do, is enforce the regulations. But we like to hire one who is a mind reader, but we haven't found that person yet. And so, if you know somebody who can predict the future, we'd love to interview them. Historic architecture is kind of more general. There's a lot of historic buildings. These are the less important ones now. We're mindful of that is important, and we're going to introduce into our plan. Number 11, the technology infrastructure. The town has been doing quite a bit about that, and we'd like to encourage it with all our buildings. 12 is a continuation of 4 and 5, but it's really less important. It's down there. What this suggests is we want to do this end of 66 before the Gospel Lane to East Hampton thing, even though St. Clements is in that area. We're figuring that St. Clements will do a lot of it themselves, but remember, I really don't have a clue right now. The last ones are kind of general. The green space, the agriculture, the tourism, and the sustainability are kind of like apple pie and Chevrolet. So we'd like to see that done, but since they're at the bottom of the list, they're not at the top of the plan. So that's my story. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
We'll open it up. Fred, did you have any comments?
You're an easy group tonight.
I was just thinking in terms of the Elm Crest project. How do you foresee the planning and zoning interacting in
Well,
the
they're-
process at this point?
They have made some change. Of course, as you know, they're planning on putting a hotel, motel there. And during that process, there are a couple of small historic buildings that we wanted them to preserve. And they agreed to do that. And they also agreed to provide a plan for their whole development. But unfortunately, they didn't tell us about that. What they did was sent an attorney to one of our meetings to argue the definition of a buildable lot and what that meant. And as a result of that discussion, we found out that they had extensive plans for their whole property. And so naturally, since they agreed to supply us with a plan, and they hadn't, we asked for it. And they have not yet provided it, but they will within the next few months. We worked out an informal agreement that they would provide us with that plan. So as soon as we see it and can comment on it, then we can go from there. The only thing I can tell you is it's going to be, as far as I can tell, extensive. It's they have great expansion plans in mind, but I have no idea what that means. Deanna does, though.
Just really quickly, Bruce, I think he asked about Elm Crest, and you were talking about St.
Oh,
Clements.
St. Clements, oh, sorry.
I just want to clarify, so what
Yeah.
Bruce was talking about.
You're right, I didn't hear you right, yeah. What do you, about Elm Crest, I don't know. Everybody's in favor of doing something, but nothing is getting done, is the bottom line.
Yeah, the plan on the table, the original plan, is more or less, well, it's obsolete based on
Yes.
what comments have come out and what they want to do for changes.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Now, the catch is, they have an approved plan that they don't want to follow, for whatever reason that they have, which means they're going to have to start the process all over again, is what it comes down to.
But until they officially present to planning and zoning or submit something, that is what's on the record.
That's what's on the record, and they have 9 years to do it. And they're like 5+ years into doing nothing right now. So they have another 4 years to do nothing if that's what they want.
So, yeah, I thought the trigger was a little closer than that, but it's actually 4 years.
Okay.
4 additional years. They have 4 additional years.
Yeah, initially they have 5 years. The state legislature changed that to 9 years.
Okay.
So that's why the longer period of time. That's why I'm so much in favor of enforcement of the building code and blight ordinance, because if there are in fact a half a dozen historic buildings on the site that need to be protected, they should be protected immediately. And the other buildings that don't have any historic significance probably ought to either be repaired or torn down. And I would be happy to see them get demolition permits for those other buildings that no matter what happens, they'll be coming down. But we can't require that. So, anything else?
Which I may be stating the obvious, but your objectives are based on the opinions of 6 people?
Yes. 6 very knowledgeable people who are not only knowledgeable but interested and active in the plan of development. That is to say, the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission plus Deanna. It's not that we're going to limit anything that happens to these 16 objectives, but there are you got to begin somewhere, and so that's where we're beginning. But if you would like to offer us your objectives, we'd be happy to add those.
Susan will yell at me if I discuss that tonight, because as you know, I disagree with some things, so.
I
we can
never
do that
yell.
another time. You have in the past.
This disagreement can be very positive. And as a matter of fact, you can see from that rank order, we didn't all agree on the ones that we had, or in the order, because if that were the case, then the first one would have been ranked, with a 6 rather than a 12, and the next one would have been 12, and so forth. So we didn't all agree, but it's a way to start that process.
I promise not to yell.
That's okay. I don't know if it's necessary tonight to talk about it. That's fine. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, anybody else?
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Carl, anything?
Nope, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you very
for your
much.
time.
Is there anything else you wanted to add, Deanna?
I don't think so. I mean, Hi, I just came to support Bruce tonight, and I think those objectives, it was just like Bruce was saying, was a starting point. Okay, we're gonna be starting to work on the plan of conservation development. What's important to you? Throw out some ideas, let's rank them, and that's kind of how it started out. And of course, there's gonna be public scoping meetings and all kinds of things to get the public's input, but this is just like, kind of like taking the temperature of the commission at that day, what are you feeling about things? And I think it was really valid for Bruce to say that, I mean, my list of priorities from sitting in the office is much different than the list of some of the members and listening to them. So I was like, wow, this is, but that's how they rank, and I said it is the whole community's document when it gets created, but I think it was just a good thing to be able to give the consultant of what the temperature of the commission is right now in this moment of time of when they started working on that, so. As far as that, and as far as Route 17 and 17A, I concur with Bruce. The property in the corner, in the front that had cut the trees is a commercially zoned property with a non-conforming residential use. So if they decide that they want to regrade the property or do anything like that, it would be something that would probably go to the commission because of what their intended use might be there on the property. So, and the property behind is a residential property, the one that you see being excavated, and that is for a permit for a home right now. So I think what people do is they visually see them together and they think they're interrelated. They're actually two separate projects. And there is a zoning permit issued for the house construction around the corner on Mr. Serb's lot, and the other one in the front is owned by a separate different person in different zones and everything, so. I don't think I have anything else to report to you. Just to follow up on the Elmcrest question that Fred had, I just want to make a clarification. The commission, when they approved it as a special permit, you have timeframes that you have to, meet statutorily for a special permit to take in effect. One thing they've never done with all the conditions of approval is filed that Mylar because they needed to make a lot of changes to the plan. There was, many comments that came through, review comments, and because they weren't sure what was going on and what their tenants wanted, they never did do that final revision of the plan for, the town to sign off on it. So they have their approval with conditions that one of them was revise the plan to do X, Y, and Z to show this, and that has not been done yet. And the anticipation and speaking with the owners and hearing them, they come every 6 months, they send a representative in front of the commission to give an update. Is that they will be back because they're obviously going to have to change certain things on the plan, maybe the driveway entrance, and there's just different things. And now with these historic structures and what they need to do with those, so I do anticipate that they do have approval. But just so you know, it's not the approval that's been filed; it's the approval with a lot of conditions that have yet to be met. But I think that they will be back with a modification that would be something that will address a lot of the concerns that have been raised since the approval. So. And if you have any other questions for me, I can.
The only thing I might add is, you mentioned this, Bruce, is for number 2, the Corey's Brownstone Avenue redevelopment, that includes some potential brownfield work, because we're doing the brownfields assessment there. So, and that might entail, depending on what the results are of the investigation, there may be a need then to implement sort of a program of brownfields reclamation.
Our definition of this development objective is broader than the 2-acre site around the brownfield thing.
Sure.
It's really from Silver Street down, kind of visualizing not only the change that is suggested by that grant, but also by fully developing that as more a recreational area or a destination site for people from out of town. In other words, expanding the premise from the quarry park to a bigger lot. So it's not just the one site. It's much bigger. It's going to take a lot of time, and that's why we're putting it in the plan. Of course, also trying to get the cooperation of the current property owners to either sell it to the town for $1 or to develop it on their own to be consistent with the quarry park.
But some of those other properties owned by other people, may also require some reclamation of the land.
Yes.
Because there's potential, and in any industrialized site, there's gonna be a potential for contamination, that the brownfields program that the state offers could be of an advantage. So I was just thinking, in some capacity, if there is an interest in reclaiming industrialized land and changing it to a new industry, that sometimes that does involve brownfields redevelopment.
And
Yes.
I think that would definitely be something that would come up in the plan, Susan, much more this time than last time, as well as, in that topic of discussion, when that came up, it also included, like Bruce was saying, not just specific properties on the riverfront, but kind of that whole area, looking at complementary uses that go with the quarry, since we know so many people are visiting there, so many people are going to the concerts on the
Right.
green, on the riverfront property, really looking at the redevelopment down there, looking at access to the river, when people are redeveloping, if they're going to develop on some of these vacant sites that have maybe some brownfields, is working in how we can, as a community, have some more public access to, the riverway down in that area. So I think it was a combination of all those things came up in that discussion
Sure.
of that number two.
We've already done an overlay zone to make this process easier. So we're trying to anticipate what might happen. But I personally believe that those properties are much more valuable from a recreational tourism point of view than they are as industrial properties. Most noticeably because they're on the river.
Right.
And many towns would dive to have those kinds of properties available. So, but when there are empty oil tanks and tar manufacturers and stuff like that there.
Well, a couple of examples is Goodwin College in East Hartford, that was a brownfield that's been
Yep.
reclaimed. And then I believe quite a bit of the Riverfront Park in Glastonbury was also a
Right.
brownfield that has been reclaimed. So, yes, you're right, there can be
And
opportunities.
Middletown's heading in that direction as
Yes.
well.
Right.
And I think it really went in concert with the third option, which was talking about, I think it was in that order 1, 2, and 3, was creating more industrial area. It's not that we want those to go, where can we work with these people? And part of the issue is they're on sewer and water down there, and out on Sand Hill Road, where we have some great properties out there that are large enough for some of them. I mean, that's where we'd like to see them out there, is there's no sewer and water there. So it's like trying to encourage keeping the industrial, growing our industrial area, because I mean, Mary Dickerson often has, many inquiries about industrial properties. There's just not available industrial properties. There really isn't. And, but we also know as the bigger scope for the town is trying, again, that's a perfect place for redevelopment down there, is where can we grow other areas. So, that's really important.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming, it's very helpful, thank you.
Thank you.
Both.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you both. I think we can handle the VCI consultant, that's the only other item. I think we're all set. Thank you for coming. The next item is, under old business, is the correction to the Board of Selectmen meeting dates. There was an error that was on your previous sheet, so we brought it to your attention. And I believe Michelle had sent that out to you in an email. This one date that was February 4. And it was incorrectly listed previously, so it's now been corrected in the document that you have in front of you. I think she had the wrong date previously. Is there a motion to approve the new list of dates?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. The next is public sidewalks, and Fred Nous had asked that we put this on tonight's agenda.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Fred.
We heard a little bit about the plan of conservation and development earlier. And let me just pass these out.
Sure. Thank you. Great.
Although the sidewalk issue didn't make the list of, that we just had before you, I think it's one of those things that's pretty important, certainly. And what I try to do is take a look at it from a viewpoint of getting some policy clarification and seeing if there's any kind of agreement to change the policy in the sidewalk ordinance. Currently, that Plan of Conservation and Development sheet that you have in front of you points out that maintaining our sidewalk infrastructure is certainly essential, and it also lists an action plan that should be implemented, and that's on that implementation schedule, that first sheet. See the strategies on the front page, that's long-term. The second, the arrow is the actual specific task. And if you look in the second sheet, you can see under who's responsible. First one, enforce the existing sidewalks maintenance ordinance. This was from our last Plan of Conservation Development. Now we're talking about the next one. So clearly, there are some areas that haven't been addressed to, at least I feel, to the point they should. Board of Selectmen responsible for that, and we are not aggressively, certainly, following that maintenance ordinance. That's the one that would require the homeowner to pay for the sidewalk repair. We had some discussion about that, and there's some financial reasons, I think, why that ordinance hasn't been enforced. The second one, developing a sidewalk improvement program, Board of Selectmen, Public Works. I don't know, and to my knowledge, at least while I've been here, we haven't done that. The third one is that safe routes to school. And I think I mentioned that once before. I feel that we do have a responsibility to maintain the infrastructure that's related to the schools. Kids go to school. There's certainly money that's saved because they're not taking the bus. It's a much healthier option for the kids. So, I think we have to look at the schools a little bit, the pathways to our schools differently than we look at some areas that are more remote and aren't, heavily traveled by pedestrians and walkers, although they're all important. And then it goes on and mentions some other issues, but I think those were the important ones. Sidewalk improvement program. Do we want to do that? It would cost a little money, certainly. Current ordinance is not, as I said, being enforced to any great degree. Many of our sidewalks are in need of repair. Some are actually deplorable. And if we continue along this path, do nothing, status quo, nothing changes except everything will go downhill or deteriorate that much more. I looked at the Portland Code 1781, Section 17, and that states that the selectmen are authorized to build and maintain sidewalks to the extent that will, and to that extent which will not exceed 15% of the amount spent on highways and roads. So there's a 15, we can't spend more than 15. I don't think we're in any danger of that. We're nowhere close to that figure. In our capital improvement budget, $25,000 is in there. That's on that second page, and that extends out for several years, and that's for both repairs and construction. My observations and hearing from Rick occasionally, I know that some of that work's done. You can see evidence that it's done a lot of times on an emergency basis because of repairs. Clearly, the $25,000 isn't going to go too far. The Public Works Director, Rick, has indicated, and I'm sure if I'm incorrect, he'll tell me, that the town has assumed responsibility to repair sidewalks. And there's situations where we do, and not requiring, obviously, the homeowner when that occurs. And I think that in looking around town, as I pointed out before, many parts of town, the sidewalks in the downtown area are damaged by the trees. Insofar, the roots grow, push the sidewalk up, and destroy the sidewalk. And it's my opinion that we do have a responsibility to fix those sidewalks. Lastly, I just think I'd like to see a policy developed, if there's support, that would start to address the problem. We certainly can develop a repair and maintenance schedule, that's the easy part. Would have to require more money in the fund, probably a modest increase in the capital improvement. If we went out and aggressively started looking for grants that might deal with it, that would be another pool of money. And two of the priorities that I established, and again, everybody has different thoughts on this, I'm sure, but one would be access to the schools, and the others would be in the downtown area and the neighborhoods where there's heavy pedestrian traffic, and around the churches, for example, and places on Main Street. I noticed where the sidewalks aren't in great shape right in front of, across from the post office, and the folks who come out from the nursing home in the summer to sit there or move around, that sidewalk is marginal. And, they have, a lot of them have walkers, it's being pushed around. That's an example of an area to take a look at. Questions, thoughts?
Well, just a few. In terms of some of the sidewalk repairs that we have been able to do, we did have the streetscape project. From the Aragoni Bridge, we did, 800 feet of sidewalk repair. And that, as you mentioned, Fred, was done not through local taxpayer money, but that was state and federal dollars. So that was a huge improvement in that one section of sidewalks. And then we did receive another grant, it was a steep grant, and that repaired the sidewalks that went from Main Street to Middlesex Avenue. And we installed new sidewalks from that intersection down to the opening to the Riverfront Park. So that's a new road that was installed, also using a steep grant, and then the sidewalks were put in. We've done some repair on town-owned sidewalks, and there was a small section that we did this year when the Middlesex Hospital building, Walt Smith's building, was built. There's a small piece that we cooperated with the owner. In that case, we didn't have a grant in that case, but we did cooperate with the owner, and we placed a small portion of those sidewalks. In terms of town-owned sidewalks, there was some repair in the front of Town Hall. Is that right, Rick? Refresh for me any other town-owned sidewalks, which is what we were concentrating on.
Town Hall, all sidewalks were installed at the time we constructed the Town Hall in the front, and obviously around the buildings in front of the police department. Those were renovated also. So we've certainly tried, with the monies available, to make sure that our sidewalks that are directly
Right.
related to a town facility are in relatively good order. Schools, I know, we cooperated with the schools and done some work with them on sidewalks, for example. Valley View, we did, 2 summers ago, put a whole new sidewalk in for them. Gildersleeve, we've done some work.
Well, near Gildersleeve, again, to Fred's point, the gas company put gas lines in on Bartlett Street. And we asked that instead of replacing those sidewalks with blacktop, that they use a concrete product.
We paid.
And we paid the difference, so the town paid the difference, and that's from the Gildersleeve School path on Bartlett Street, in that vicinity, down to Main Street. It would be nice to continue that to the school, and there's an example of how we could put more sidewalks, because on the east side of Main Street, that sidewalk ends, so you have to cross to get over to the other side. So that's just a highlight of a couple, especially those grant opportunities that we were able to avail ourselves of. I agree, if this is something the selectmen want to do, it is easier for us to concentrate on projects that you say is the policies, that it's important to get done. And we certainly will, I would support that. I think it's an important endeavor. And I think prioritizing around the schools is certainly very important. Sally Doyen, when she was superintendent, did apply for the Safe Routes to Schools grant money, and had outlined, together with Public Works and the school personnel, how that would work and where repairs would be made. And we did not get that funded. She did not get that grant. If we get the grant on Spring Street for the water main, the steep grant, we hope to be able to, and maybe with a cooperative effort with town taxpayer money, use some of the steep money to then put in real sidewalks on Spring Street. Right now, there's just some
That is
black,
part of it.
but there's also a potential, what I should say is you don't always get everything asked for. So I think should be a priority, and Rick and I have talked about
If the
this.
grant comes through in the amount we've requested, we will
Yes.
replace
The sidewalks on
sidewalk.
Spring Street, which would also be toward the school, because many youngsters can and do walk up Spring Street Hill, and there's only a line, and then there's blacktop, and sometimes people park on that blacktop. They're technically not sidewalks. So there's a priority right there. So I would say that I agree that we should proceed, and if there's a policy in place, and as dollars become available, either local tax dollars and in concert with grants. And I would also say there may be some private landowners, and I had one person call me, I think I mentioned it at the last meeting, that lives on Main Street, and she's very interested in participating in any program that we might have for improvements to her sidewalks that are in front of her house.
Fred, thanks for bringing this up again. As you know, I believe it's the town's obligation to repair and maintain all these sidewalks, but I think this board has to determine what our policy is, whether that's going to be the policy, or whether the ordinance that we have now is the policy where it's the adjacent landowner's responsibility. If that's the case, then I see somewhat of a problem here, because the town is selectively putting in sidewalks in one place and not another place, and, you know, so we're doing it for certain landowners and not others. I think that's somewhat problematic if that's the way we're gonna go. And beyond that, I think we should have a program, whether it's fixing the sidewalks along the way to schools or downtown or whatever you decide. But I think the idea is just to make these sidewalks safer. So I think we should have a program where we can identify where the problems are and fix the ones that need to be fixed the most, or whether it's high traffic or whatever, you know, variables should take into place in terms of resolving those and fixing those. But again, I do believe it's the town's responsibility to fix these sidewalks.
I mean, this has clearly become a top priority for the board lately, and I think that if we are serious about this, I'd like to see maybe we can increase our capital improvement number from 25,000. And I mean, how much money are we talking to do every?
I can give you just an
Yeah.
example. We looked at, for example, at part of the grant we applied for the junior high school. I think I brought this up before.
Rick, could you come up to the
And it was
microphone?
700.
Thank you.
For example, we looked at improvements, what grant was that, Susan, in front of the, it had
Yeah, that
associated
was
with the tennis
Urban
courts?
Act, Urban Act money.
And just as an example, the length was 700 feet. It was basically to remove 700 feet of sidewalk in front of the Brownstone School and in front of the tennis courts, and construct a new 700-foot, 5-foot wide sidewalk. That cost was $47,000. So you'll do, for $25,000, you probably could do 350 feet.
Yes,
So
I
you're
don't
looking
think
at-
that's enough. And
You're
if-
looking at some very large, to properly propose a sidewalk program, you're looking at hundreds
Oh, easily,
of
hundred.
thousands just to start. You're looking at millions of dollars to get into
Yeah.
a full-blown, you're looking into bonding.
Yeah,
Most likely.
but I think a program, as you mentioned, Fred, is something that we can look at. Although, you know, I'd like to make sure that these sidewalks are some kind of uniform standards, so that, you know, they also are not only safe, but they
We
look
have
nice as
We
well.
have, we have specifications.
That's in the,
We always
ord-
have
it's
that.
in the ordinance. Did
Very
you
good
see that?
specifications for sidewalk construction. We've always had
You're
them.
right, we do, and you're right.
We do and we
have
will.
to.
And
Okay.
we inspect sidewalks, and if someone comes in to do a sidewalk, or we go for a grant to do a sidewalk, we follow the standard uniform specifications. It's thicker at a driveway, it's uniform width, it's, you know, it's done with the proper expansion joints. So we don't willy-nilly allow that.
But if we're gonna have a program, and some people are going to sign up and some people aren't, but at the end of the day, we're still gonna do all the sidewalks, what's the incentive for a homeowner to join a program when their neighbor might not? You know, that's something that we're gonna need to figure out, I think, as well.
Well, I know one of our priorities was to ensure that, particularly in the commercial district, which is downtown, that those sidewalks were walkable. So when Rick mentioned the Urban Act money, that was some Main Street and also the Transportation Enhancement Act and STEEP money. And in terms of the Riverfront Park, that was to bring commercialization, if you would, to the riverfront area, which is the Brownstone Exploration Discovery Park, that allowed us to do some development in that area. And is there another sidewalk area that we talked about? The commercial development on High Street, which is a very small piece, but we did improve that. And then the gas lines at the school. So for me, I think it's important that we have safe routes to schools, that the sidewalks are in place for the schools. That is
Main
certainly
Street's
important.
bad. I mean, that's where a lot of kids walk on Main Street, and it can be pretty dangerous.
Yes.
And that's where I think should at least be an original focus. I agree with you, Fred. I mean, schools, walking routes, that should be number one, I think.
We have to prioritize
Yeah.
our wants and needs on our sidewalks, and then go from there, then see what kind of a program we're gonna do.
Isn't there something inherently wrong or inequitable to pay for sidewalks for some people and force other people to replace or maintain their sidewalk? That just doesn't seem fair to me under any analysis.
I think I'd like to address that,
Sure.
because I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I don't think we've done quite that. The major sidewalk improvements projects we have done, and again, it's not quite as bad as it sounds, I don't think, have been, for example, the project from 66 to the bridge, for example. It was $1 million project. And that was a project that was not only sidewalks, that was an economic development project. That was the biggest one. And it needs to be said, and I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying it. Yes and no. The project where we repaired sidewalks up Main Street, again, we've tried to, in fairness to us, to look for those opportunities when we can do sidewalk improvements that are associated with a grant of economic development or some sort. Again, a good example, probably maybe a good one for you, Brian, is Spring Street.
Yeah, I agree with
But-
it.
but
That
let me-
all
let me
makes
fi-
perfect
Let me
sense,
finish,
but-
let me finish, if I could. Spring Street, if you, I could have certainly proposed the water, it's a water main replacement project specifically. And I could very well have suggested to you that we would save $100,000 and let's not do sidewalks. We're going down that road and do a water main, but let's leave the old sidewalk, or not do a sidewalk. So I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say to you is we have not gone out and repaired sidewalks in front of private properties kind of on a willy-nilly basis. It's usually been associated with something more than. And I guess that's maybe, I just wanted to clarify that.
Well,
Yeah, I agree, but de
Brian-
facto, it's
I'm not saying
unfair.
it's right or wrong,
Yeah.
or fair,
Right,
I'm just saying
right.
it's kind of.
But how would you, let's talk just a little bit about, how would you go about a program when you know that you don't have the ability or the practical aspect of repairing everything in one season? Let's say you
No,
had.
you need to prioritize it, and I think you need to
Right.
identify where it's mostly unsafe and attempt to fix those or patch them or do whatever you're doing. I think as a practical matter, that's where we are at this point. identify what those problems are, fix those, highlight them, warn people if there's a problem, whatever the case may be, and then implement some sort of program so that this can be taken care of just on a regular basis, so it's maintained by the town. Just like everything else, you're talking about
Yeah.
water mains and everything else. I mean, rather than doing it all in one time, it should be planned and done accordingly. That's how I think it should be done.
Yeah.
But
As
but
a-
right now, there's a big problem, so.
As a follow-up to that, and I don't disagree at all with it, and a suggestion for you, I mean, budget time's coming. So if you folks wanted to say to me, hey, Rick, we would like you to look at the following sidewalks and come forward to us at budget time with, this is what you folks will need to put into the capital budget, I would be more than happy to do that to start. If you say, look at all the sidewalks anywhere within so many feet of a school, or if you say, we want you to look at X, Y, Z, I'll come forward at budget time and say, if you want to do that, here's what you need to budget. And that's a suggestion for you.
And I would say, just to reiterate, I think what Fred was saying, is what we're doing now is nothing. So you have this ordinance that requires abutting landowners to do this, but we're not requiring them to do that, so it's not as if anything's getting done anyways.
Well, I think it is somewhat onerous to go up to, like you have stated several times, a private property owner and say, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this. It's not an easy thing, and most private property owners aren't gonna want us to do that. So where you really start is perhaps revising the ordinance, because you have to have the rules established as to what it is you're going to be doing. And then we have a template against which we can implement. If we have an ordinance that isn't really enforceable because it isn't really correct, then we need to rescind it, and you need to rewrite it. We have road regulations, we have the sidewalk construction rules, but in terms of how we fund that and how the priorities are established, it is something I think we need to have, like you said, Fred, a policy, which i.e. is an ordinance. So I think you need to look at the whole picture. I mean, I would argue it's not just repair, but there may even be a need to put in sidewalks in some locations. There's a strip on, I personally know on East Main Street, that if you're walking, you have to go out on the road because the sidewalk's gone. It's near the cemetery. On Spring Street, there's sidewalks on one side, not on the other side. So you can establish sidewalks on both sides of the street and one side of the street. On Main Street, there's areas of Main Street which has sidewalks, and then there's areas that have no sidewalks, and they end. And you see that in a lot of communities where developments come in and they're required to install sidewalks. And then the owners that have been there longer, such as we have on High Street, there's a strip right there in front of one of our businesses that has no sidewalks. So connectability as well as repairing. And you also have, not so many, but you do have some old brownstone sidewalks that are very difficult for people to traverse. Do you want to get rid of those and put in the concrete?
I think that's what I was thinking of before.
Sorry?
There's your money, you can sell the brownstone.
But those brownstone sidewalks, what part of the code, like, I think that's what I was thinking of when I was asking about the uniformity of it all. Because to me, to go from concrete
Those were there
to
before.
brownstone.
Maybe even I
That's
was
a
born.
separate issue. And, you know, sure, we could remove them and put a very significant base under them and set them and mortar them. They have historical value. You know, there's a whole host of issues that come, and we all know this, that come when you change your policy. And there's a lot more to it, I think, than maybe meets the eyes. And I absolutely agree that you need to do something, and I absolutely agree we have not been proactive, and that's for a number of reasons. I agree that we need to move forward, but I agree you need to think this thing out very thoroughly, because it's gonna, you know, you got roads that are state roads. You go on a state road and replace theirs. You have historical issues such as the brownstone. You have You have logistical issues. Many places where there isn't a sidewalk, there's not a sidewalk there because there's a reason there's not a sidewalk, either grade or ledge or a main under it. Now you got gas lines under it. I mean, there's a lot
You know,
to this.
I was in West Hartford today, and I was walking, and, on the sidewalk, and some of the driveways aren't sidewalks, but they're like a cobblestone. So when
Whoa.
your car goes over the sidewalk, I guess, it won't destroy the sidewalk, because it goes up and then across. And then you had an area, I'm not suggesting that we do this, but I'm just pointing out another town. They had actually wooden planks along in front of an older home that you could walk on, but it was kind of interesting that they had that. So, you know, there's a nice element of walkability, and one of the reasons we concentrated on the commercial district was it's easier to get grants, because they often have that as a component. And, there's a lot of people that walk on those sidewalks. And there's a lot of people that walk on the side roads as well. And, we need to fix them. I just get a little nervous because I know how much money we have, and we need to find how we fund these things. We're gonna talk about the next cost item, and that's, you know, water and sewer rates. And we always need to talk about roads, we always need to talk about sidewalks. And if we come up with a plan, it's easier for us to implement it. And I think everybody understands, and they'll be willing to fund it.
Yeah,
So where do you wanna start?
I think we should start with, maybe getting, like Rick had suggested, getting just some ballpark numbers, I think that we should really seriously consider, upping the budgeted amounts for sidewalk improvements to something that actually, we can do something substantial with. At least talk about it, at least have some options first. I mean, if we ignore this, we're gonna end up with the water and sewer problem all over again, where, you know, the sidewalks are gonna keep getting worse. So if we don't start tackling it now, there's no point in putting it off anymore. We need to do something.
Mhm.
So, we should, I mean, and I think those brownstones are the worst ones. They have the biggest steep, like, inclines. Like, when I go running at night, those things can take you out, you know? And, I don't know about the historical value, but I do value my neck, so I do wanna see those fixed.
Well, you know, I was thinking about that, but browns, you know, you think about how long the brownstone, I mean, and some of them are obviously should be reconfigured, but when you think about the length of time they've been in the ground, and some of them are in better shape in some places than the concrete sidewalk. So I think, yeah, the safety is the big concern, but I think as we talk about this, there might be some sections that historically that everybody would agree that maybe we should look at a little differently. So, to get to your point of one concrete, of just having, you know, one type of sidewalk, you always have to have an exception. Just like with cobblestones, and some communities put cobblestones in, and they, you know, just because of the commercial aspect, it helps traffic, it helps their business. So,
Deep River
what I'm
put in
saying is,
brick
I don't
sidewalks.
think we should just throw brownstone out and say, no brownstone. Or the brownstone town.
I have nothing against brownstone, don't get me wrong. I just think that these, because they're brownstone, they tend to be the oldest ones, and probably the ones that most need attention. I wouldn't be against fixing them, but we need to do something. We can't leave them the way they are. And I think, and Brian has swayed me from, I'm sold now. I don't think it should be on the homeowners, because, you know, the more I think about town trees, raising the sidewalks for some homeowners, not others, you know, there's so many gray areas in between. I don't think it should be, you know, the town can't put in sidewalks and then tell these people that they need to, you know, maintain the sidewalks that the town should be maintaining.
Many of the sidewalks, just to clarify, many sidewalks are put in by the developers, particularly in our newer developments. For example, Paley Farms, they put in the sidewalks as part of their development, so the town didn't pay for that. The homeowners ultimately paid for it because they paid for the homes, but the developer, and that's part of development costs, and it's part of planning and zoning's requirements. When they put in certain developments, they do require sidewalks. We often will see, particularly in some of the closer knit areas, where the sidewalks aren't put in until the latter part of the project, and then they come in front of planning and zoning, they being the homeowners, and they ask to not have them put in. And that did occur in a couple of developments in town, because there is cost associated with care, upkeep, and maintenance. But be that as it may, there's a lot we can talk about. I think we gotta start with the ordinances, and I think you gotta visit it, and you gotta change that law. If you don't want that responsibility to be the homeowners, or the property owners, I should say, they're not all homeowners, some of them are business owners, then you need to change that law, you need to change that ordinance. And then come up with policy for how you want us to proceed, whether it's through local taxation or, aggressively looking out for grants that would be available, and how we would go about doing that.
So do you want to do a subcommittee then? We've had some success with our
That would be,
subcommittees.
that would be fine.
I
That
had a
would be
feeling we were
helpful.
going there.
Any
Second.
volunteers for that?
Sign me up.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would like to be on that.
Okay.
And since it's co-baby with somebody else on the board here, sidewalks, I'll take the other one, unless
Thank you.
my good friend over there.
I was waiting to see what you did, but if you wanna do it, it's fine.
Do you want it?
No, it's okay.
I think what we do have to do first is, before we start to talk about monies and so forth, I think we should have some kind of a study to identify, recognize what we actually are looking at. I don't wanna just say, well, we're gonna put this kind of money into the budget, this kind of money. I think we have to have, first, to see what is actually needed, then we have to have rewrite the policy to see what we're gonna do, and then possibly rewrite the ordinance, so that the ordinances fit the policy of what we wanna do to the problems that are at hand today.
Mhm.
So I think there's logical steps, and we should be going one to the next, and not just jumping ahead and
Sure.
throwing this.
Okay, so shall we have a nomination for a sidewalk committee? And the members would be Ryan, Carl, and Fred. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
So moved by Brian, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ryan. Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So then the committee can let me know how you would, and what you would need to proceed. And we'll do our best to make sure you have that.
Should we set a meeting date, or should we do that later?
You can certainly do that.
When do you guys like to meet?
Have that public hearing, maybe February?
February?
Yeah, okay.
The first meeting, February 4th?
Yeah.
At what time?
7?
Okay. In here, right?
7's fine, yeah.
You can put that agenda together. And, let me know what you need for that, members. The next is water and sewer rates, and you do have in front of you, in your packets, you should have a draft of a public hearing notice. And I had also sent to you a sheet, and I don't know if you downloaded it, for sewer information. Let me just go through the packet and see what's in the packet here. Did you see that sheet that I had sent you in the email?
I
Okay.
didn't open it.
Okay. It's contained within this, sheet, but it,
That was the one, you had one that was side routes when it was on. the
Yes,
side, yeah,
yes.
I couldn't download it all the way, yeah.
okay.
What, was it the very large one?
No, that was water information?
Yes.
Is that the sewer rate analysis?
Yes. I had sent it ahead.
Hey, Rick, while they're doing that, can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Just looking at, on page 2 of this, do you have this?
Yep.
E93 private fire protection charges.
Let me just be sure. I mixed up.
This section here?
A 9.3.
E93, yeah. Just tell me what that's all about, can you?
Private fire protection is, for example, the industrial sites, a good example would be down on Walcott Ave, or down in that city where the bigger sites, they have the option to have their own hydrants. In other words, they have a private fire hydrant. And we charge them a flat fee for that hydrant. In other words, they pay twice a year for the, it's a private fire hydrant, non-town owned.
Yeah.
Okay, and usage there, it's unmetered. So for example, the kind of the theory is there is they could have a fire. You wouldn't be metering any usage on the thing. That's how a lot of private fire hydrants are set up. I'm not sure what your question was, actually.
I guess first I was just trying to figure out what it was, and then,
Yeah.
so the idea there, I suppose,
There's not an awful lot. It doesn't-
there's not a lot, okay. I just didn't know if it made sense to necessarily charge someone for that, because I was wondering if it was an incentive, if you actually wanted people to have these types of things.
No, it's common practice through most towns or communities, most water providers. Private hydrants are a normal thing, and we operate like most water purveyors do.
Okay.
This is my copy of what I had sent to you, which you can review and pass down. I just have 2 copies with me. I did want to make one comment. I received a couple of phone calls. One phone call came from one of the owners of one of our golf courses, and he wanted to point out that something that was actually in the River East. While it's almost correct, it's a little bit not correct, and that is, I think it said, bear with me here, I have it. That 8-inch meters that serve the golf course and surrounding streets. They do have, some of the golf courses do have an 8-inch main, but they wouldn't be serving only golf courses and surrounding areas. We have 8-inch mains that are in,
8-inch meters.
8-inch meters. 8-inch meters that are in, there's 4 of them in the town. So it was, while it's true they have an 8-inch meter, there are other areas of town that also have 8-inch meters. So he wanted me to point that out, that it's not just the golf courses, that it's other areas as well. And I received a phone call from, and an email from the Bartlett Hill community, and their concern was with the information on the cost associated with water, as well as the cost associated with the flat rates for the meters that we're looking at changing and increasing. And a resident had called me and said that the flat rate for the meters is very high as well. So that's some feedback that I received. And what you have in front of you is some information about sewer and water rates. And the water, we went through the water regulations, which I had also sent to everyone. I said that I would, and I did that. If anyone needs them printed, I can certainly do that. I just had a lot of paper, and I didn't want to bring a lot of extra paper. But if you want them, just let me know. I'll get them for you. But within the water regulations, there is a series of other rates and other costs that we've put into this draft for your review, such as offenses when there's a mandatory water use restriction, whenever there's unauthorized water use, there's a fee for that, vandalism and littering. There's also, as we mentioned, the private fire protection charges, incidental water use charges, charges for incidental services rendered. These are all outlined in your regulations. And then there's fees associated with turning on or off a fire hydrant, turning off and on water service, meter readings for transfers of property, which real estate people are familiar with, meter tests, and backflow prevention service testing. There's fees associated with that. Those are being reviewed. Hydrant flow test, and then service installation for 1-inch service, 1.5 inch, 2 inch, 4 inch, 6 and 8 inches. And then all other incidental services rendered at hourly rates of the different trucks that would be needed. One area that is not on your list, because it's not part of the regulations, but we have talked about it, that would be for public fire hydrant, a maintenance and upkeep fee, which we talked about last time as well. So there's quite a bit to a thorough review of these rates, and I wanted to bring your attention to them. And is there something else I wanted to tell you here? You can see under the sewer rates, there would be a flat rate per quarter increase, processed material fees, that's septic waste receiving fees, for customers not on water, but on the sewer system. There's a 2,100 cubic feet per quarter multiplied by the current rate plus the flat rate fee. September reading, October sewer billing. Residential customers to be billed the average combined consumption of the previous 3 quarters or actual metered water usage, whichever is less. I think we've talked about that. Application fee to connect to the sewer system increases from $25 to $50. And then, as you know, we bill everyone quarterly. I wanted to also point out that as far as our research showed, rates, in terms of when they've been adjusted, I just wanted to review that with you. Many of you were not here when we interconnected with MDC, but at that time, the rates were increased tremendously because of the infrastructure improvements at the time. And that was at about 1999, 2000, 2001, I think, is when the rates were actually implemented. And they were not adjusted again, as far as I could see, until 2011, thereabouts. And in 2011, they were raised 3% for just the,
Just water.
yeah, is that called the user rate, Rick?
Yeah.
Per 100 cubic feet, yeah. And then they were raised 3% in 2012,
No.
and also in 2013. And maybe in 2010, 11, 12, and 13. Yeah, there were 4.
Yeah.
So rates have not increased tremendously in the
15 years. In 15 years.
15 years.
Some of those increases we've seen from the supplier in what
And someone had said to me, Rick, they'd said, well, how come our rates seem to be so high? And if you take a look at our rates, they reflect changes in the 100 cubic feet, but we haven't raised them every time Metropolitan District Commission has raised their rates. So for water at least, when we get the water from MDC, that rate is what is charged to all their customers for 100 cubic feet. That would include the cost for them to prepare the water, clean the water, whatever infrastructure, and so forth. So we pay that, and then on top of that, we have to pay for that interconnection and for whatever additional work that has been done on the infrastructure. So that's debt service, principal and interest. And then we have not 3 employees, because there's 2 that are filled. There's the vacant position. And then we have 2 positions that we pay for. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of comprises what the fees are. And while our source of water has increased, we haven't increased rates every time that's occurred. I just wanted to recap that for you.
I was unable to attend our last meeting, but what impact do we expect these increases to have on the annual deficit?